So if I can get you to just zero in on me just for a minute. I want to talk to you today about a very important message. And I've titled the message, A Church for the Next Generation. And I want to encourage you to go on a journey with me for the next few minutes. And I just want you to just dial in. Some of you are prone to just kind of look at Facebook or look at TikTok or whatever, you know. I just want to encourage you to focus in and engage. And normally I don't read a story, I tell a story. But I'm going to read this story because it's so good and the way the story is. And I want you to just, it's going to be a minute. It's going to be okay. Because the story is very riveting. I want to share a story about a young boy who was born in a small village called Wolfstrop in England in 1642. This young boy's life couldn't probably have started any worse than it did. His father died before the boy was ever born. And on top of that, the boy was born prematurely, which today is not a big deal or doesn't have to be, but please remember this was 380 years ago, and being born way too early left him weak, left him sick for many, many years. By the way, a side note, I was born prematurely and was in the hospital for 2 or 3 months, so I can identify with that. I wasn't born 380 years ago, though. Let's be clear about that. On top of that, now his young mother was a widow, and she was only 19. She was left in bankruptcy and famine without the possibility of providing for her family. All of a sudden, when the boy was 3 years old, a priest came from a neighboring village of North Witham, and he proposed to this young mother who was only 22 years old at the time. The priest was almost 70. And he asked the young mother to marry him and move in with him in his vicarage in the other village. There was only one condition. She couldn't bring the boy. The priest hated the boy. But for some reason, of course, it's hard for us to understand why the young mother accepted his proposal for the sake of financial stability. She left the small boy to her parents to be raised by them. And she got married to the priest. And she moved into his vicarage, and she didn't even see her son for many, many years. You know, when you're only 3 years old, you don't know everything. But you know when you've been rejected. You know when those who should have loved you are not doing that. And as the boy later became a man, he would write in his memoirs his heartbreaking story. Little toddler boy walked over to the other village, and he sat down on a hill overlooking the village and looking at the vicarage where his mother was now living with this other man. And he would just sit there and he would hate for hours. He would hate the mother for giving him away and rejecting him. He would hate the priest who took his mother away. He would hate the God that the priest represented, and as the years went by, hate spread in this heart of this boy. And when he started school, he was an angry child. He would talk back at the teachers. He would not learn. He would bully the other students, and he was the big problem of his small little schoolhouse. And all that happened until one day. You know there had to be a turning point, right? Until one day where a man moves to the village and he becomes a new teacher of his school. And now history doesn't tell us much about this man apart from the fact that his name was John Houston and he was a devout Christian. And for some reason, John Houston's eyes were fixed upon this little boy. And even though he would have had such an easier task teaching and tutoring other students, he just looked at this boy and he made up his mind that there was beauty in there somewhere, and I'm going to do whatever I can to bring it out. And he started to pray for him. He started helping him and loving him and listening to him and giving him extra time in his studies. Now, previously, every year, this boy's grades had come back every single year saying three things: lazy, will not learn, good for nothing. Lazy, will not learn, good for nothing. But as the months turned into years and this boy was all of a sudden down, shown encouragement and love and appreciation and prayers, gradually, this little dark heart started to open up. And when it did, to John Houston's amazement, he realized that this boy had an amazing intellectual capacity. He had a great academic potential. And as the years were added to one another, that became obvious for the entire school. And all of a sudden, this boy was not a problem anymore. And they realized that especially in the areas of math and physics, he excelled. And when the boy became a young man, and it was time for him to graduate from high school, John Houston did everything he could to make sure that he would go to Trinity College in Cambridge. And when he got there, partly paid by John Houston himself, every single seed that God had planted inside this young man's heart started to grow and bloom. And after a few years, he was the talk of the university. And after a few years, he was the talk of the town. And after yet a few more years, he was the talk of the nation. And today, he's the talk of the world, because his name is Sir Isaac Newton, one of the greatest scientists in human history. Sir Isaac Newton's grave in Westminster Abbey in London, written on his epitaph, it says, "Here lies Sir Isaac Newton, a man with an intellect close to the divine." They had a way with words back then, didn't they? And then it went on to say, "Mortals rejoice that such an ornamental humanity existed." You have one man, two verdicts. One verdict that said, lazy, will not learn, good for nothing. Another verdict saying, an intellect close to the divine. The reason why it stirs up a lot of emotion in me is because I think about where I was when I was a kid. And there was a guy by the name of Johnny Williams that poured into me. And the reason why I am where I am today is because of several men that came in and did not give up. And here's the big idea today. Guide the next generation to who God made them to be and live it out. We're at a crossroads in our nation. I do not believe, it does matter, but hear what I'm saying. It doesn't matter if you believe in God or not. It doesn't even matter if you believe in the Bible. If you read Scripture, you look at the news, you see things unfolding, and if you put two and two together, you're like, it's very interesting, isn't it? Yet we have a next generation that is coming up that if you think we've had it hard, they're going to have it harder. We grew up some of us have grown up into a society where it was normal. It was okay to go to church. It was normal to love God. You heard about God. We're coming into a time, we're already in a time in our country to where we're post-Christian at best. And we must do everything that we can to reach the next generation. Listen to what Exodus chapter 3, verse 15 says. It says, God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel. The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever. Thus I am to be remembered throughout, say it with me, all generations. But here's the problem. The problem is that we are into our own generation, aren't we? We get stuck. We are stuck. And I wonder if there's any John Houstons in the room today. I wonder if there's any John Houstons in the room that will begin to pour into someone younger than them. That will begin to guide them, guide the next generation to who God made them to be and to live it out. Psalm 33:11 says the counsel of the Lord stands forever. The plans of his heart to all, say it with me, to all generations. What is needed for that, however, is that we all accept our calling to be spiritual parents, spiritual mothers, and fathers. I'm challenging everyone in our church that if you're at 20 years of age or older, that you find someone else younger than you and pour into them. We should not have a deficit of workers in our children's ministry. I know it's the norm across America. I know mega pastors in Kansas City that are struggling. We should not have that because we should be reaching the next generation. And we say it all the time. We're like, the next generation is the hope of the church. But we don't act like it. Like a few people can go teach them, good boys and girls. And today is Step Up Sunday. We've never done this before, but we're going to do it right in the second service. You'll get to see kids that are moving from our children's ministry to Club 456. You'll get to see kids that are moving from Club 456 to our student ministry. They're going from 6th grade, right, Pastor Brandon, to 7th grade. Teenager in the house. I'm going to pray for you. But you're going to need more than prayers. Yeah, they're going to need more than prayers, though. They're going to need action. Listen, I want to come down here and I want to talk to you for a minute from my heart because I want us to get this right as a church, and I don't feel like that we've always gotten this right as a church. So I want to talk to you. What would happen? How many of you are at 20 years of age or older? Raise your hand. Okay, we got a few of you. Okay, put your hand down. What would happen if you found one kid, one teenager, and just poured your life into them? Loved them, went to their games, believed in them. What would happen? What would happen if you took someone that was known as can't learn, stupid, an outcast, and you believed in them? What would happen if you brought out of them the potential that they have inside of them? Because listen, church, if we keep going the way we're going, I'm just going to tell you, and I've done a lot of thinking, when I was out of town, if we keep going the way we're going, I was just interacting with El Camino Grace Church, and their biggest question for me when I met with their leadership is, we want to reach young families. We want to reach young families. How do we reach young families? Now they're a church of predominantly 70 and older, and most of them are in their 80s and 90s and 100. They had 10 kids in their student ministry, sharp kids. Very few children. And now they're asking the question, how do we do it? It's not that that can't be turned around, but I'm going to tell you, I don't want to get in that position. So I'm going to just tell you some of what's going through my mind. We've got to start getting younger people involved in the ministry around here. They got to start helping. When I was 13, I started preaching, and I was on a creative programming. I helped plan out these Bible clubs for 120 kids every Tuesday. I had responsibility. I had meetings I had to go to. They were training me. They were teaching me. They let us as teenagers lead, and they shepherded us. We got to start taking our kids, 456, and we got to start letting them lead some of our younger children. We got to stop acting like there's this great divide among generations. We as adults have to say, you know what? This is not about me anymore. Well, I don't like that music. That's a really thumping music. That's loud music. They ought to be a little respectful to God. Maybe they are being respectful to God, and maybe that's your generation. And if I had time today, but I don't, I was going to have fun with you and go through all of the hits of like the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. You know what? And they're all different, right? But no question in my mind that the 80s had the best music. Come on. All right? But see, everybody that just clapped was children of the 80s. We were traveling to the Ironman in my truck to do the Ironman with Chris Ward, and I was listening to 80s, and he goes, turn that stuff off. You remind me of my mom. And I was like, and I said, you shut up. You're in my truck. He goes, I don't like the 80s. I don't like you. But no, we were just having fun. But listen, here's what we do. We think our generation is the best. We think, why doesn't the church serve my generation? What would happen? Listen to me, I'm calling our church to a pivotal shift. What would happen if we said, you know what? It isn't about me anymore. I know how to feed myself spiritually. I know how to get up and put my clothes on. I know how to feed myself physically. I'm going to go out and I'm going to make a difference in the lives of children and in the lives of teenagers and the lives of college students. I'm going to go and I'm going to pour into someone younger than me. I think about often if when I accepted Christ at age 12, I was a week before turning 12, I accepted Christ. When I got home, my mom said, hey, can't afford you right now. So me and my middle brother moved from Buckner, Missouri to Pleasant Hill, Missouri to live with my grandparents. And I would go to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And little did I know that when school would start that year, I would meet Johnny Williams through a You for Christ pizza party. And it would just change my life. And I think, what happens if I wouldn't have met him? And I think about the trajectory of my brother's life, who was just a couple of years older than me. I'm 52. My middle brother is 55. The trajectory of his life, he grew up in the same family. And I know I've said this before, but I want you to get it on this point, that he had all of the opportunities that I had. And yet Johnny came into my life. And he loved me for who I am. He had to beat some sense into me. One time he had to throw me across the room. We won't talk about that because I was acting like a sixth grader or 7th grader. All right. I see adults nowadays that I feel like I need to throw across the room, but then it would be like assault. So I don't want that to happen. So now we've hired Pastor Jordan, and his job is to throw them across the room. Come on now. But here's the deal. What would happen? What would happen if we said, hey, Life Quest Church, yeah, it's my church, but it's not about me. What would happen if we started getting younger people on the stage? Younger people. What about if we started doing some of their music? Some of the ways they like to wear. I just don't like that. I think I'll go somewhere else. You're going to go somewhere else, and you're going to be part of a church that's going to die. I had a church call me recently. Pastor Jordan and I talked through it. They were talking about they wanted to be a campus of ours, and we decided between mutual stuff, they went a different direction. They're not very far from here. They have a building that's paid off, property. They're down to 20 people at best. And when the pastor tells me 20, I know that it's probably 10. 10 people. Nothing wrong with older, but listen, and I'm getting older. But if all we do is cater to older people and we don't reach and teach the older people to be mature Christians, to reach and disciple the next generation, I don't ever believe that Christianity will be extinct. I don't believe that because of what Jesus said. But I do believe that it could be crippled. Listen to what Psalm 78, 5-7 says. It says, he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded to our fathers to teach their children, that the next generation might know them, the children yet unborn, and arise and tell them to their children, so that they should set up their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments. So how do I fulfill my responsibility to the next generation? How do we as a church fulfill our responsibility to the next generation? Let me give you a few ways as we close here. First is a word, dependence. That I am a guide to the next generation in dependence on the Lord. That I show them by example and vulnerability that this is what depending on the Lord looks like. Dedication. I am to guide the next generation with a heart of dedication. That I am to be dedicated to my work, and I'm to show them what a good work ethic is. And I'm to be dedicated to my family and show them what being dedicated to my family is. I saw Johnny Williams love his wife. I saw him and his wife get into fights. I felt like I basically lived there except sleeping there. And then there was a couple times I slept there. I remember helping him renovate this old house over in Northeast Kansas City for a Youth for Christ club. And I remember just going over there every day and eating with them and just living and doing life with them. I saw the dedication to the Lord. And I said to myself, I want to be a man that is dedicated like he is. If the generation doesn't see an example and all they see is bad examples, what are they going to want to be? The next word is demonstration. I am to guide the next generation by living my life as a demonstration of God's glory. That I'm to demonstrate what humility is. I'm to demonstrate what living for the Lord is. Being committed to a local church. Being involved in a life group. Serving the Lord. And living, listen, living unselfishly. The next word is discipline. I am to guide the next generation by being faithful to discipline from a heart of love. That the next generation sees discipline. They see discipline in my spiritual life. They see discipline in my physical life. They see discipline in my emotional life. They see discipline in my relational life. They see discipline in my mental life. Young people want to aspire to be like someone that is disciplined. Because when somebody is disciplined, they can accomplish way more than a person that's undisciplined. Woo, that'll preach. Somebody tweet that out. Oh, or X that out. Whatever. Since it's not Twitter anymore, it's X. Yeah, I'm on Twitter too, so, or X. Sorry. The last word is this, deploy. Everybody say deploy. I am to guide the next generation by ultimately deploying them to live for Jesus and on mission with Jesus. And let me ask you a question. Are kids smart? Are kids smart? Are teenagers smart? Even my little grandson, who's going to be 4. Yep. September the 10th. He'll be 4 years old. And we're going to party like it's 1980. You know what he says to me? He's so smart. He goes, Poppy, I'm not little anymore. You don't have to call me a baby. I'm not grandbaby anymore. He's smart. Listen, kids are smart. And here's what they do. They see us talking about living for God, but our lives don't match up. They see us talk about serving the Lord, but we don't really serve the Lord. And they come to the conclusion, oh, that must be what it means to be an adult, is to say one thing and just don't do it. And I don't want that to happen. The big idea, guide the next generation to who God made them to be and live it out. I want to read, several years ago, I was at a conference and I went to this luncheon or dinner and the speaker talked about this and he asked us one question and I wrote it down and I go to this often and I want to read it to you. Okay? How many of you have children? Okay? How many of you have grandchildren? Okay. Lean in. I'm almost done. Lean in. Okay, if you're looking at your phone, stop looking at your phone. Okay. What kind of church will it take to reach Graham? To reach Iris? To reach Asher? What kind of church will it take to reach Amelia? What kind of church will it take to reach Thomas and Marley? Come down here. This is serious business. This might end up being a series, and I lied to you. Listen. You think that I started this church and I want to go to the point to where I'm 60 or 70 and all of us are 60 and 70 and we're getting older and there's not a lot of young people around and that we're trying to figure it out? We got to start now. And if I were to give us a grade card on this, we're failing. Oh, Pastor, you're being really mean now. You're going to hurt my feelings. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I'm just telling you. We don't believe in pouring into the next generation. If we did, our children's ministry and our student ministry would not have a problem finding people. Because people would realign their schedules to serve. And do you know the joy of serving and pouring into someone else? Because now I've had the opportunity to do that. And now people that I poured into are getting married. And they're having kids. And now they're introducing me, which sometimes makes me want to punch somebody in the face. But that would be mean. They're like, hey, this is my pastor. He's been my pastor since I was 12 or 10. And then now they're getting married and having kids. And I'm like, yeah, I started at 1. I'm still young. Makes me feel old. Do you know what joy it is, though? Do you know what joy it is to see generations? That's what's cool about being a pastor for a long time at the same place, is you get to see the generations and poured into people. What kind of church will it take to reach Nico? To reach your grandkids, to reach your kids? And are we willing to sacrifice and lay down our preferences to reach the next generation. I can think of all kinds of people that are doing this. The Mitchells are one example. Jesus has transformed your life in a short period of time. You've come to Christ, you're serving him, you went through our leadership intensive, you're pouring into Club 456. It takes a lot of work. It's at that age that is very formative. I believe if you take 4th grade through 8th grade, this is what I believe for a long time. 4th grade, listen to me, 4th grade to 8th grade, if you don't reach them in that period of time when they get to freshman and sophomore, they've already developed their beliefs and they're moving in a high rate of speed. Thank you for pouring into them. Tina, thank you for taking our children's ministry, and as a part-time staff person, you're pouring like full-time hours into figuring out how to do that, and thank you for doing it. And sometimes having to have conversations with Pastor Jordan and me, and you're trying to figure out how to get people to serve in there, and you just have this desire, and then you're a single mom and you're trying to do all this. Thank you. Let's give Tina a hand. So what would happen? What would happen if we became a church that started reaching the next generation? And we laid our preferences down and we said, we're going to serve them, we're going to love them. What would happen if our church just exploded with 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, and they just started coming in and packing in, and we started doing music that they would worship to? Well, I think I'd just stay out in the car and tell the message. You're a sourpuss. Listen. Jesus didn't die for you and I to be self-served. Jesus died for these kids just as much as he died for you. Let's choose to be a church. Alex, come on up. Let's choose to be a church that is for the next generation. Let's turn the tide. Let's go ask Tina. Let's go ask Pastor Tim. He'll be back tomorrow. Let's ask him, hey, how can I serve you? How can I help you? Well, I need help on Wednesday nights. I need help bringing food. I need help doing this. I need help doing that. You know what? I will realign my schedule. I'm not that busy. I will realign my schedule to serve some youth. Because there just might be. In the youth that you're serving, in the children you're serving, there just might be. The next Isaac Newton. And there just might be the next Billy Graham. Dare I say just might be the next Chris Pinion. Oh, Lord, help us. There just might be the next person that becomes a world changer. Because you cared. You took 2 hours a week to love, to go to somebody's game. Imagine someone that doesn't have a dad or doesn't have a mom, the grandparents are raising them, and for you to show up in the stands and to say, hey, you're sitting on the front row, hey, John, it's Pinion. I'm here. Linda and I, we're rooting for you. We believe in you. You can do it. And do you know what can happen to a kid when he knows that someone loves him or her and says, you can do it. You're not alone. When I know that I'm not alone, when I know that I've got a team with me. Yesterday I had the opportunity to serve with Harrisonville Fire Department, and we had 2 structure fires. And it was a long day. It was hot. And there was some challenges. But I knew that the crew I was with had my back, and I knew I had their back. And I knew if one of us was going to get hurt, that they were going to help us. And we were exhausted. But I knew that they believed in me, and I knew they had my back. So let's become that church. Let's bow our heads and close our eyes. I want us to become a church for the next generation. I want us to become a church that will serve our kids and our grandkids, to guide the next generation to who God made them to be and to live it out. And so, Lord, right now, I pray that you would convict our hearts, that you would help us to figure out how to serve our children in this church and our students and the next generation. There are hundreds and thousands of students within a 5 to 10 mile radius of this church that do not know God, and they do not go to church, and they do not have a whole family system. Help us to figure out how to reach them and to love them. We love you, Jesus, and we thank you. We thank you for who you are. We thank you for Isaac Newton. We thank you for what you did in his life, and for a guy by the name of John Houston who believed in him enough to share Christ's love with him and to believe in him. May you help us to make a difference in our world, in the next generation. In Jesus' name I pray. And everyone said, amen.